All right. We are going to talk about one poem in this lesson, just to kind of walk you through a poem and see all the things that you can do with it and all the things that you can notice with it. So we're going to look at Haydn Leaves London, which is on page 90, and I'm just going to read it, and as we go along, I'm going to point some things out that I think are really interesting and helpful for understanding what's going on here, okay? I'm going to assume that you've done a little bit of background knowledge or background research before you get to this poem so that we don't have to cover that. Okay, so Haydn Leaves London, August 1795. So you can go on if you go to the chronology, you'll see that is where he left, when he left, okay? And a lot of what I'm gathering from here, I found from research other places, actually found a lot just by doing Wikipedia and looking at Haydn there. So here we go. I work too slowly for their appetites. I am a plow horse, not a steed. And though the plow horse cultivates the very grain that gilds their substantial guts, they will thrill to any chase, lay down a tiny fortune and their good name on the odds of a new upstart darling. Okay, so when he says I work too slowly for their appetites, it's important to know that he was really in demand as a composer in London. His music was often performed. His sheet music sold really well. He became pretty rich and famous off of his music at this time. And he was not really able to keep up with their appetite for things. But if you notice here, it says, he says, I'm a plow horse, not a steed. And then he goes on and describes what he means by that. Though the plow horse cultivates the very grain that gilds their substantial guts. In other words, a plow horse is going through and helping harvest the grain, which is necessary to eat. So we're talking about like turning it into bread and things like that. And so that horse is necessary. They will thrill to any chase. So we're talking about something like a racehorse or something like that. Lay down a tiny fortune and their good name on the odds of a new upstart darling. So while Haydn would rather be composing things that are a little bit more complex, like concertos and things that require a little bit more work, he is feeling the pressure to create a bunch of new, just really quick, flashy things. And they want something that's just kind of new and exciting, says they'll thrill to any chase. And I would compare this to the amount of superhero movies that are out now. It seems like Marvel has completely dominated the movie industry, and people want big and flashy much more than they want something that's just kind of sturdy and reliable when it comes to movies. And that he's saying that this is what the public in London wants as well, is new and flashy, kind of that kind of music rather than something that's kind of more, what we consider kind of classical stuff. The first trip I took up Pleyel's Unspoken Dare and promised a new piece every evening for the length of the concert series. I have a note down that Pleyel was a composer that writes very easy pieces to play and very prolific. Probably those two things go hand in hand. And if you think about writing a new piece every evening, that's pretty significant. That's moving along at a pretty quick clip. Intrigue fuels the coldest ambitions. The daily newspapers thickened with judgments on the drummed-up duel between the maestro and his students of yore. So let's talk about of course, the newspapers then are just kind of like the tabloids today. They look for conflict. They like conflict and battles and things like that. His student of yore would be Beethoven. Beethoven was a student of Haydn, emerged on his own during this time, and is also gaining some renown as a composer. This makes me think, though, that First Lesson Adagio, the poem that we looked at in class on Monday and Tuesday, could be about Beethoven and not Bridge Tower. So I feel like somebody might have found that out in one of the classes on Monday, and I said, no, I think it's not about him, but now I'm wondering if that actually is what it's about. If nothing else, the poem still remains about like performance and what you do with that. So maybe on Tuesday with that group, we'll take a look and see if we can figure out anything with that. What was I thinking? I am old enough to value now and then an evening spent with starlight. Not one twittering fan or lacy dewlap obscuring my sidelong glance. Yet I came back to these noisome vapors, this fog-scalded moon, fat and smoking, and its lovely dominion. The black Thames pushes on. So not a very flattering description of London here. Fog, scalded moon, fat and smoking, black, describing a river as black. I close my eyes and feel it, a bass string plucked at intervals, dragging our bilge out to the turgid sea, a drone that thrums the blood that agitates for more and more. Well, it is done. I'm leaving. I bore down for half a dozen occasions, wrote a 4-part canon to a faithful dog, which is true. It's called Turk, a Faithful Dog, and it's a 4-part canon. I didn't really listen to it. I think it's like a song and round or something like that. Wheedled a few graceful tunes from Solomon's orchestra, that bloated fraternity of whines and whistles. Solomon's the guy that brought him back to London. He works for him, and he apparently has nothing good to say about him because he describes the orchestra as a bloated fraternity of whines and whistles. So probably frustrating. You think about it like a composer. We're used to today people playing their own music. So you have a musician, they compose their own music and hire some people to help out with it perhaps, but if you're a composer, you're not involved in that process, and so you run the risk that other people are not going to interpret your stuff very well. And now I can return to my drowsy Vienna, wreathed in green and ever turning just slowly enough to keep the sun soft on her face. So we have the contrast between the Vienna, which is described in nature, green, ever turning. It's almost like it's kind of the cycle of nature and things like that, as opposed to London, which was described with noisome vapors, fog, scalded moon, kind of the product of like industry and things like that. So he's happy to escape from there. We've got some contrasts between the two places. Actually, a lot of contrasts in here. We've got the plow horse, not the steed. We've got London versus Vienna. Lots of things like that you can notice here. So this is a piece, about just kind of looking back. He's not regretting leaving. It was just a little too busy for him, and he did some really good work here from what I understood, but he's ready to go back to Vienna, where the public pressures are not to just crank out stuff. It's like they want new Haydn music more than they want good Haydn music, and so he can't feed the appetite for their stuff, and I don't really know, maybe some other composers really filled the gap there with that. So anyway, that's what's going on with this one. Just a close look at this particular poem. Hopefully that helps model the kinds of things you should be thinking about as you look through poems. I didn't do a whole lot with where the lines ended, but I think this was enough. I'm already at 7 minutes and 15 seconds, so we'll stop there.